So we like to start with our last seminar. It's called Food Meets Sake, Pairing Sake with Food in a Modern World by Anthony Moss, Director of Strategic Planning West Certified Educator, and Jessica Jolie, Beverage Director at Tokyo Record Bar and West Certified Educator. Please give them a big hand and please enjoy.
Okay, well, that does sound like it's projecting properly. Okay, I think I can certainly hear myself. Right, so we're going to briefly introduce ourselves and talk about a little bit about our link with sake and food and beverage pairing. Then we'll have some particular examples that we'd like to share with you that will then lead to some kind of action that you can take within Manhattan, some restaurants you can go to, some things you can do at home in terms of pairing sake with non-Japanese dishes. And meanwhile, we have assistants coming around with samples of sake and samples of food so you can see whether what we're saying is actually true or not. It'll be true.
Yeah, and you introduce yourself.
So now, introduce myself. I'm Anthony Moss. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning at the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. So the WSET provides education in wine, spirits, and now sake in over 70 countries around the world, 95,000 students in total last year. My origin in sake was in 2011. I was in Japan training a group of wine educators, and on the final day, a very good friend of mine, Kenichi Ohashi, who's the only Japanese master of wine, thought that it would be very good fun to go to visit a sake brewery. So overnight, we went to Shizuoka and visited Isojiman, and that was the first time that I'd really seen the production facilities, tasted sake with the person making it in context in that way, and really a light went on in my head. And we talked about the idea of maybe WSET developing some sake education, but there were some challenges. You know, we needed to find people to teach it, we needed to get expertise in order to develop it. But that then became the next big project that I worked on. So with Natsuki Kikuya back in London, the two of us developed a level 3 award in sake, like a really, really top-level detailed qualification, which Jessica has passed with great success.
Shall we go to the next slide?
And almost. And then a level 1 award in sake, which is a very, very good introduction. So that's really my background with sake.
Wow. Well, thank you, Anthony. I'd like to introduce myself. I am the beverage director at Tokyo Record Bar, and we are a brand new restaurant this year. We are featuring amazing sakes, Japanese cuisine as well as American food, a mix, which is why I am here today. I also work as the marketing director at Sake Discoveries, in which we provide education, training, and consulting for restaurants and companies providing the knowledge for sake. And I do have the WSET Level 3, which Anthony was my sensei, my teacher, as well as an accreditation of Kikizakeshi for Sake School of America, as well as an honorable title as Miss Sake USA. So I hope that I can continue to spread my passion for sake throughout all of US, and that's why we're here today.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So, in a way, I'm here to represent the wine side of things, but I just told you that I've been completely sucked away from the wine part of the business. I could also have mentioned that I'm also a master of wine, but it's sort of, that seems like a thing in the distant past. So there is a very, very, very deep culture that's developed relatively recently in sort of precision pairing between wine and food. And it's something that can become quite obsessive. Now, I have a personal view on this that seems to be becoming more and more widely adopted. That the reason people who are into this spend so much time talking about wine and food pairing is not because wine goes so well with food, it's because it can go so badly with food that you actually really need to put a little bit of thought in. You know, you have tannins in wine that with certain kinds of food, if they're high in umami, those tannins taste kind of really bitter and metallic. You have acidity in wine And once you start pairing that with certain kinds of foods, also with umami or sugar, that acidity starts to become very, very unpleasantly high sometimes. So wine has a lot of stuff in it that can be quite challenging. And that's really why sommeliers have to spend so many years training, learning, thinking carefully about pairing. I mean, of course, you can go beyond there to kind of matching aromatic elements with the wine, and wine has more aroma compounds than almost any other beverage that I've encountered. It can be very, very complex, and that can add some opportunities for fun. But fundamentally, I think wine can go very, very badly wrong in food and beverage pairing. Meanwhile...
Very well said. Thank you, Anthony. Because what people think about pairing with sake. So 1,000 years ago, sake was a very religious drink that was served to the gods. It was very honored. But in modern day, sake is served amongst many people in Japanese as referred as izakaya style. Izakaya style basically means that many dishes are served amongst numerous people, maybe one or two sakes. So it's not that one person may enjoy one certain style of sake, it's that they enjoy many different dishes amongst one certain style. And that's different in terms of Western culture, because in Japanese cuisine, many of them are different profiles while they might be drinking one. And then that's very different because Japanese cuisine is an array, and we want to offer different cuisines other than Japanese today, which is why we bring that connection, correct?
Correct, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, I like this quote, Anthony. Sake's role is to be the best supporting actor, not the main star, which should be the food. Do you agree?
I completely agree. It's almost like I'm a plant on the stage. Yes, but I think that's very, very much a good philosophy to bring to pairing. I haven't commonly encountered the situation where somebody's taking a sake and then built a beverage program, a food program around the sake. I mean, it would be a lovely thing to have a bit of fun with, but the broader culture, I think, of drinking sake is for it to be simply there on the table, to be enjoyed with company, and not be the main focus.
Awesome. So let's think outside the box, outside of Japanese cuisine, whether it be Italian, Spanish, French, right?
Absolutely.
So many different cuisines. I think everyone's a little thirsty. So the first sake, crisp, clean, and dry. Here we have Hakkai-san Awa. Everybody on your left, right?
It's the first one, yes. So it should be marked, yeah, Hakkai-san Clear Sparkling Awa. So we should have, there's a dish coming around to go with this, is that correct?
So just so you guys know, there is food pairing. They will bring it momentarily. If you guys just want to smell and taste slightly, the food will be coming out shortly. So please don't finish it before we're done explaining about the pairing. That's the most important thing.
So while those beverages are going round, I had a very, very enjoyable experience in January in London. There's two almost slightly conflicting views of what the future route to success is for sake. On the one hand, there is a view that because Japanese food is growing in respect and popularity, and that is a wave that sake could ride with great success. But I think if you just focus on that exclusively, you're missing out on a number of really, really amazing opportunities outside of that pairing. And my little dream, is that if somebody's going into a normal pizza restaurant or a normal Italian, just a simple restaurant, just as nobody would think it was odd to order a wine, a beer, or a Coke, sake should be on that list. And one of the things that encourages me to think that that's actually possible is that when I entered the beverage industry, late 90s, early 2000s, we saw a lot of industry trends sort of showing how each generation had its drink of choice, and generally it was something different to what the parental generation drank, it would usually be some kind of reaction against it. And what we're kind of seeing now with people in their sort of early 20s, mid-20s, is that there's a much more kind of open-minded attitude to a repertoire of drinks. So we're not trying to create a generation of sake drinkers, but we're trying to enjoy the fact that the new generation who are coming to drinking alcohol are quite happy not to classify themselves as a beer drinker or a wine drinker or a spirits or a bourbon drinker.
Which
but
is
to
what
say,
leads us to Hakkai-san Awa, right?
Yes,
Sparkling. Because
yeah.
why would someone drink beer
Yes.
or carbonated ginger ale or sparkling or kava when they have Hakkai-san Awa?
well, exactly. So this has such beautiful, delicate bubbles and such a fine, light texture. There's a lot of dishes that this worked well with. And the thing we did in London, we found that this kind of beverage works extremely well with sort of fried fish combinations. So the kind of Mediterranean calamari, it can be absolutely amazing.
You mentioned fried fish.
Yes.
So we're going into one of our first pairings, which unfortunately we cannot offer every pairing to you today, but we will offer you one, but we'll continue to talk about them. So here we had the fried calamari, the fried fish,
Yes,
right?
yes. So that should be coming out quickly.
No, this one is not coming
Oh,
out.
okay.
But please
Okay.
continue.
So, of the this exercise that I described in London, we had master sommeliers and masters of wine. So people from a wine background and a very, very high-level sommelier, Isabelle from the Fat Duck at Bray, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. So Isabelle selected one wine to go with each dish. And one of my friends selected 6 sakes to try against the wine. And for every single dish that we had, there was a sake that actually was the best pairing. And usually the wine was second or third. And we found, with 2 dishes in particular, this did extremely well. We did a classic British fried cod and chips with a sort of a fluffy beer batter. It was absolutely amazing. And then the kind of classic Mediterranean, Greek, Italian style calamari. There was just a beautiful lift of the bubbles with the batter.
Excellent. What about the beef lak-lak?
So this is something that's more like what I might eat at home. That might sound odd, but my wife and I really, really love spicy food, aromatic spicy food, and we're quite experimental. I mean, the last holiday we went to was to Cambodia, and we came back with an absolute love of the cuisine. Now, I love drinking sake as just kind of a beverage of choice during the week. So very often, this kind of thing would be paired with a very, very light sake. And what really works very well here is that you have a delicately flavored drink that just picks out the aromatic elements of the spice in this dish. And you're not really worried about one overpowering the other because they're sort of occupying different spaces. So really, really lovely combination, I find.
Excellent. So as we are here in New York, doesn't everybody love pizza? Yes. I mean, I hope so, because we are here to offer your pairing with pizza tonight. So in front of you, you have pizza, which is a very American dish. It's a very regular dish that you may have maybe in the morning that's kind of cold, or you might have it when it's warm at 1 a.m. after a few glasses of sake. But all I can say is that, again, as Anthony mentioned, it's comparable to beer. It's comparable to kava. It's comparable to sparkling. It's comparable to your club soda that you may choose. What is the difference? Obviously, the difference is the amino acids, the compounds, but ultimately is a carbonated beverage. What makes sake such a bad pairing? Honestly, it's a great pairing. Cheese, full of umami. So is sake. So why not pair it, especially when you have a very clean and crisp style of sake like Hakkai-san Awa, which is brand new. You want to pair it with that cheese that's full of umami, full of sauce. Everybody wants to have sake with pizza. And then you might have a little bit of dessert. Who loves dessert, right? You might want to have a little bit of that refreshing citrus, that dessert element. Why does everyone think that sake should be paired mainly with your main course or your aperitif? It's always a great option to have as a digestif, just like Hakkai-san Awa. Maybe a sorbet with citrus or lemon, something a little bit more refreshing. because this is such a clean and crisp sake, you want to offer something that's citrusy, maybe something that has a little bit of sweetness like lychee, where you incorporate a little bit of the drizzle with a little bit of the fruit. You want something that's refreshing, that's going to cleanse your palate. It's going to be a beautiful pairing. I hope everybody enjoyed their pizza. So next, we go into sake profile number 2. In 3 simple words: unique, delicate, and aromatic. We have Amabuki. For those of you who may not know, it is one of my signature breweries. Here we are featuring Gin no Kurenai, which is featured middle, second on your flight. I like to refer it as the Pink Lady. Amabuki has been around for about 300 years. Currently, it's in its 12th generation president, and they are known to use flour yeast. Now, I don't know how much you guys may know, but flour yeast is pretty uncommon for sake brewing. But with flour yeast, it kind of creates a little bit more of aromatics, which give it this designation. And specifically with this sake, it uses an ancient strain of black rice. Now, if everybody would pick up their glass and look at this color, it is beautiful. It is a rosé style. That is why we call it the Pink Lady. Now, the reason for that is because they blend the fermentation. So they have their regular fermentation tank as well as the black rice, and which when they combine it, it turns this pink color of rosé. And you get a little bit more aromatics than the first sake, a little bit more of acidity, and maybe a little bit more of a character that you did not the first sake. Now, flour yeast, is that something common that you guys are familiar with? Are you familiar with flour yeast?
I am a little, but it's a very interesting area. I mean, if you think about how sake is made, maybe in contrast to the way something like wine is made, with wine you have a very intensely flavored base ingredient, and the aim of the winemaker is to capture as much of the flavor of the grapes as possible, especially if you're extracting flavors from the skins, which are very intense in flavor and color. Sake, you're making it from rice, so actually a lot of the flavors that you get come from the type of yeast that's used. And there are, fewer than 10 kind of really, really commonly used yeast strains that are supplied by the Brewing Society of Japan. And I mean, they're used because they give very, very good results. But as I mentioned, this sort of trend that we're seeing with younger drinkers wanting to explore diversity, even within categories, it's nice to have greater diversity. And being able to find yeast in nature that can give you different flavors to what, Brewing Society yeast are amazing, but there's a wider world. There are millions of different kinds of yeast.
Absolutely. And for those of you who may not know, yeast is a very generic component for sake making, as sake, water, yeast, and koji are the prime ingredient, and all 4 components are very delicate. And yeast is one of them, which affects flavors and aromas, which is why we're featuring this next one. And obviously we want to know what pairs really well with this next sake. So, beef bolognese.
So this is another kind of, this and the next one are both sort of midweek dishes for me at home. And the kind of thing that I would be regularly drinking with sake. But what we found with this exercise we did with the Master Sommeliers and Masters of Wine in London was that, particularly with the sakes that have a little bit more umami and a little bit more acidity, this hasn't got a lot, but it's got some, really, really nice balance of umami and acidity. Dishes that had really, really cooked down tomatoes worked incredibly well with those. So here we have 2 examples. We have from really contrasting examples, but from Italy, the bolognese sauce with all of the other things that go into there. And then the next one, the lamb jalfrezi, which also in the sauce contains very, very kind of cooked down tomatoes. Both of these We had a kind of a high umami, well, a kind of medium plus umami style of sake that was absolutely gorgeous. And this offers a similar kind of flavor bridge to those kind of dishes. Yeah, I know from almost every week experience that these kind of dishes go very, very well with this kind of sake.
Great. And so I want to kind of take it back. Togarashi popcorn. Everybody grew up with popcorn. But why not add a little bit of spice? So by adding a little bit of spice, it enhances the flavor of the sake. And honestly, saltiness always wants to make you drink more. With a sake like this, that's still a little bit acidic and very aromatic, you know, it creates a nice balance. And then here we go into sweet and sour chicken, which is what we've chosen to pair your sake this evening with sweet and sour chicken. I mean, who didn't grow up with Chinese sweet and sour chicken? You have a lot of flavors, the sweetness, the sourness. The true meaning of opposites attract is offering the element of sweet and sour for this delicate and aromatic sake. So here we bring two different styles together. It's kind of your go-to, right? And then lastly, we want to bring that element of dessert or your munchie, let's say. The dried fruit with the nuts offer the Western version of what we call kakipi. Kakipi, for maybe those of you who do not know, is a very kind of classic Japanese dish, salted rice cracker with salted nuts. So here is your American option. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, that was me. I should have done that.
Dried apricot, cranberry, and nuts. So you get your fruit element, the sweetness, and the saltiness from the nuts. It's an excellent pairing. And your third sake, here we provide fruity, aromatic, and juicy. We go into a brand new style of sake, recently launched. Phoenix Jumai Daiginjo is using a local strain of rice called Dewa Sansan, milled down to 50% from Tatenokawa Brewery. Now, Tatenokawa Brewery specializes in only using Jumai Daiginjo quality. And this is a very unique style because it's a special collaboration. The notes inquire a lot of black cherry and raspberry, really nice aromatic style. But there's a little bit more of a story that has to be said. Now, Phoenix, I'm not sure that many of you guys know them, but I do. And Thomas Mars, Christian, Beck, all the members, they are a very famous French band. Thomas Mars, the husband of Sofia Coppola. You guys know that wine? Maybe you do. They are a Grammy Award-winning band. Listomania, Too Young, featured in Lost in Translation. Recently launched Ti Amo album. And they met a very kind of friendship. They created a friendship with this gentleman called Toshiro Kuroda in France, pictured in the far left, in which they became friends who taught them about Japanese culture, who actually passed away last year. And with that, they wanted to honor him, to show a little bit of respect for him. So they decided to collaborate with a Japanese brewery called Tatenokawa. And with that, they launched Phoenix Sake. And actually, a part of the proceeds goes to the Japanese Red Cross Foundation in search of cancer awareness. So it's just a very nice, thoughtful part in which we create food, music, and entertainment, and people today. And we want to talk about the pairing because this sake is so good. This is the third one.
I have a confession to make now. Now that we've got to know each other a little bit. You've had this with the seafood paella.
I have. I have to be honest. I already had it together. But you recommended this one.
I haven't. But, so one of my colleagues back in London She's originally from Andalusia, but her family's from Valencia. And one of the secret little benefits of working at the head office at the Wine and Spirit Education Trust is that sometimes when you don't get through a full bottle in the classroom, there's leftovers and you get to take them home. So the first time that Almu took some Junmai Daiginjo sake home, she was making a seafood paella. And now every time there's Junmai Daiginjo sake left over, it's seafood paella night. It's like, she says it's the most amazing pairing, and now she's telling her Spanish friends. So I know it works very well. I recommended it with
It absolutely does.
And I'm glad you tested it, but I just didn't have a chance to check myself. Thank goodness it works.
But the next one.
This one I have done.
Yes.
And actually, there's a lot of foods that have basil in it. Those aromatic leaves. So things like the salad where you've got the tomatoes, the basil, and the mozzarella. That can be quite light in texture, but there's something about the interaction between the leaf, the aromatics, and the aromas that you get in Ginjo-style sakes. They just seem to bring each other to life very, very well. So either the salad form or something like this where you've got little bits of the herb cut across the top. And especially with the salt that you'd sprinkle on here as well. It just kind of also brings a bit of life to the sake. So this is one I have tested many times. If this doesn't work, I'm responsible, yeah.
So I know you've tried your bruschetta, which I love, which is amazing with the Phoenix sake. But today we have offered the cherry tomato with prosciutto. And what we've discovered in general with this sake, specifically after speaking about the bruschetta, is that the amino acids, generally with sake, it's full of amino acids, as is tomatoes. And so when you offer those together, you pretty much get an umami bomb. So umami is obviously the fifth sense, is what they say, full of savory and sweet. So you're getting a bunch of that with the tomato as well as the prosciutto. So when you wrap the prosciutto with it, you get a little bit of that fattiness, a little bit of that richness that kind of puts these qualities together that make it delicious. And another option, we want to give you that sweet tooth, right? Everybody has a sweet tooth, is the berry tart. So because this specific sake, the Phoenix, offers that kind of black cherry, raspberry nose, it gives it a little bit of that aromatics that actually comparatively go together with a berry tart where you're getting the natural sweetness from strawberries, blackberries, all the fruits go together. So sometimes you might have something very opposite, but sometimes you might have something very compatible. So it's the perfect fruit combination. Now, I can continue to talk about our food pairings, but don't you guys want to go somewhere that offers these for you outside of Japanese restaurants? I mean, I hope so.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I think one of the really important things that needs to happen, obviously it can't happen too far ahead of the market, but it needs to help the market develop, is non-Japanese restaurants starting to have sakes on their list. And these will be the ones that are the pioneers, the ones that we'll be talking about 10 or 20 years' time as well.
Absolutely.
So it's exciting to see this happening. And you've got some real examples here.
Absolutely. And I think especially with mutual trading every year growing so fast, we see markets outside of Japanese culture, Chinese, Korean, American, just high-end to low-end, from medium class all the way to Michelin star. And that's what we ultimately want, right?
Well,
as professionals in this industry, we want to offer an array.
And in fact, often it is the Michelin star restaurants that when you have the tasting menu and the tasting pairings, Often there'll be a sommelier that's kind of got the sake bug and will sort of sneak in one sake as one of the pairings. I love that, but that will only be ever a small scale. It's the affordable restaurants that I think are
exactly, because we want everybody to enjoy these restaurants. So the first restaurant that I would like to introduce is Socrat Paella Bar. This is located Midtown East, super accessible, 2nd Avenue. I believe it's on 51st Street. It's a very traditional Spanish paella bar. As you can see, they have this paella. The signature dish there is called Socrat Paella. Be sure to keep that in mind. And the exciting news is that next month in October, they will be featuring a special event called Ola to Japan to feature some sakes with their dish, including some Japanese ingredients. So be sure to stop by Midtown East for their Ola to Japan event. But honestly, you're the one who brought up paella. I mean, don't you think this is amazing?
I think it is amazing, and I mean, there are so many, this kind of rice-based cuisine can go very, very well. There's a lot of high umami elements in Spanish cuisine. There's just an enormous scope. I mean, in fact, this is why there's now a sake brewery in northern Spain that's there to supply the local market to go with local cuisine. I think we have a great future for this.
Absolutely.
I know where I'm going for dinner later this week.
Yes. So the next place I would like to introduce is Ikinari Steak with over 9 locations. Ikinari Steak, although a Japanese chain restaurant, is setting the bar when it comes to steak and sake. Why drink red wine when you have sake? Because you can get all umami from 3 components: sake, steak, and J sauce. You can get all of your umami from 3 components at Ikinari Steak at any of their locations. Just keep in mind, Phoenix Sake is only offered at 1 location so far.
Yeah.
Broadway and 54th Street, but maybe expanding soon.
Okay.
But I mean, steak and sake. Did you grow up with steak and sake?
Sadly, no. There is this very, very deeply ingrained idea that steak should be consumed with red wine and probably with an expensive Napa Cabernet. And we learn or we're told that there's an interaction between the protein in the meat and the tannins in the wine, and that somehow if those tannins aren't present in the beverage, then something will be missing from the pairing. But actually, there's been a surprising amount of recent research on what actually happens when food and beverage kind of are consumed together. And this idea of the tannin protein reaction taking place, it does take place a little bit, but it takes place so slowly that it's irrelevant to the pairing. What's actually the biggest part of the effect that you experience is usually the steak will be dressed with something that has maybe an acidic component and a salty component. And acidity and salt are very flattering to beverages that are high in acidity and high in tannin. So they kind of make a powerful, grippy, drying red wine taste more pleasant, and you taste the fruit in the wine. So there is this sort of change that occurs that's quite interesting. However, if you're preparing the steak in a way where you're not using necessarily lots of salt and acidity, but you're using components that are high in umami, then umami makes those tannins taste, well, for example, the sauce, yeah. The umami makes those tannins taste even more bitter and more metallic, and the wine tastes even drier and more acidic. So especially for this kind of steak dish, sake can work amazingly well.
I want that right now.
And it's so traditional in Japan as well.
Absolutely. So steak and sake, I mean, the Japanese people eat rice and steak. So what's so different from drinking sake and eating steak is that pretty much it's a liquid version, right? Because sake is, the base is rice. So that is so traditional versus Americans may choose to eat starch like mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, French fries. But let's change that mentality to kind of bring sake. It has the same umami compound.
But even if you're having fries with your steak, please drink sake with it.
Exactly. And so, I just wanted to let you know that if October 1st is National Sake Day, I mean, we are approaching less than 2 weeks. That is a Monday. If anybody is in the local region, please stop by any of the 9, maybe 10 locations at Ikinari Steak for double the Niku mileage. That means that you get double the points. Or actually, I'm sorry, you just get a free edamame. Excuse my presence. You get a free edamame if you purchase a glass of sake on National Sake Day. And that's literally in 2 weeks. So why not take this opportunity to have steak and sake? Umami and umami together. So stop by your nearest Ikinari Steak. Check the website. There'll be one right next to you, I'm sure. And, oops, can we go back one? I'm sorry. So our last recommendation is Tokyo Record Bar, as I am the beverage director there. It is one of the newest restaurants that opened actually late last year in the West Village. It is an homage to the vinyl jukeboxes for guests to pick their song of choice as well as their drinks. It is a modern way to approach customers for sake, as we offer them a dining theater experience. Now, those of you who have not experienced it, please do, as we offer probably one of the newest experiences here in New York. Very fun, theatrical, good food, great sake, and a great experience. That's what the next millennial wants. Everything about Instagram, everything about social media. Now, not to say that high-end restaurants they're great, but the millennial, we have to think about modern day. That's the whole point of this presentation. Modern day meets sake. We offer sake for the modern day. And now our drink list looks a little something like this. Now maybe those of you who know, this is a record in the center. We have designated it by flavor profile.
Some of us grew up with records.
Oh, you do? You remember those records. Good, because it's coming back. Light or full, dry or rich. Now, it may be simple, but we've designated those palate profiles by flavors, something that everybody can associate themselves with. Whether you're Japanese or American or Chinese, it doesn't matter. Flavor profile is designated by aroma, which is how we place them on the profile. That doesn't necessarily mean it's added or infused in flavor. It just gives you a nuance of what that sake is, whether it be lychee, yuzu, honey or yogurt. But this is how the modern day is approaching sake. And I can tell you that we sell a lot of sake. Now, that's the whole point, right? To approach the modern world. So, sake is super food friendly. That's what I like to believe.
Well, basically my last 4 years of drinking whichever sake happens to be in the fridge, with whichever dish I or my wife happens to be making that evening, I've had a lot of combinations. And I have never found a combination of sake and food that fails. I found a lot of combinations of wine and food that can be really very, very unpleasant, and even some surprising combinations. So I would say that sake is something absolutely just to experiment with. Anyone who's kind of a little bit reluctant or nervous, just drink it like white wine, serve it cold in a white wine glass, and you can be confident that whatever you're eating, it will be pleasant. And then with some of the dishes, you will find fireworks, something really, really surprising, aromatics being picked out, some really, really interesting things. So experiment away.
Absolutely. And just lastly, As the Tokyo Record Bar beverage director, I'd like to welcome every one of you all to come to Tokyo Record Bar and experience for yourself the true dining experience with sake and maybe Japanese food and maybe not. But to really experience, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, check us out online, talk to me, send me an email. I'm here and I'm ready to spread that knowledge with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, any questions?
Anybody has any questions about food and sake pairing?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No questions?
We've given all the answers. I've never done that before.
I mean, sake outside of Japanese cuisine.
Yeah. It's a huge
They're
subject.
they're just a little nervous.
Yeah.